Made with Spoken.
The Ornament by Chris Galati. All rights reserved. Chapter 1. The Ornament. Private Irwin Humphrey had only been on the island for a few days, and he already loathed everything about it. Humphrey's squad leader, Sergeant Saunders, had assigned him and Private Davy to a foxhole that had already been dug. When Humphrey asked who had dug it, the sergeant had turned away quickly. He and Davy had exchanged worried glances but made themselves at home in the rather spacious hole. The bottom was dotted with countless spent cartridges, which he recognized as M1 rounds. He didn't look too closely, but he thought he might also see blood. But in this heat and humidity, it could have been anything. For all he knew, it could be the remains of a worm or some unknown jungle insect. He'd never seen so many insects in his entire life. Mosquitoes could be atrocious where he came from, but nothing compared to this. On the month-long ride over in the troop transport, all the medical personnel seemed to talk about was how careful they had to be about the malaria-carrying mosquitoes. Now that he was here, he understood their fear. There were thousands upon thousands of them, just within the few feet he could see. The little bastards immediately assaulted any exposed skin. He itched until he bled. Private Davy said in his nasally voice, "Hell of a way to spend Christmas Eve, isn't it?" Humphrey nodded and replied, "I hate it here. This place feels as far from Christmas as I can imagine." Davy nodded his agreement, then asked, "What does your family do for Christmas? Do you get a tree?" Humphrey replied, "Oh yeah, definitely. We make a big deal out of it too. We go out to the forest with a saw. My brother always brings a little hatchet. He's only 10 and likes to pretend he's a woodsman. We find a great big tree, 10-footer at the minimum. Mother always has to make sure it's full in all the right spots. My dad likes the blue spruces, but my mom likes the evergreens, so they always argue about it. Mom usually wins. Then Dad cuts it down. We haul it out through the snow and tie it onto the Studebaker." "That sounds swell," Davy said. Humphrey added, "But that's not all. That's just the beginning. Mama brings out the food, and while she's getting it out, we help Dad build a fire. Once we have some good coals going, Mama wraps and throws the Krautkrugen rolls right on the coals and heats them up just perfectly." "What the hell is Krautkrugen?" Davy asked. "It's this mixture of meat and sauerkraut wrapped in dough. Once it's heated, you put mustard on it. Sweet mustard, hot mustard. It's all really good. Mama spends the whole day before getting them ready. By the time we're done eating, we can hardly move." Davy said, "Well, that sounds a lot better than what we normally do. We just get ours off a tree lot. My dad makes a big deal out of it, and we usually end up with a pretty good tree. He likes the haggling with the lot guy the best." Humphrey said, "That's another great thing about the way we do it. It doesn't cost a thing except the gasoline to get out there and back." Davy looked out into the jungle. Evening was still a few hours away, but that wouldn't make it any cooler. Sometimes the sun going down made it even worse. The small sounds of soldiers all around them filled the air. Veterans, men who had been through combat and lived to tell the tale, surrounded them. Besides Sergeant Saunders telling them where to go when they first arrived, no one had spoken a word to them over the past 2 days. It was as if they didn't exist. The veterans wouldn't even make eye contact, adding to the feeling. A few were older than them, but even the oldest didn't have many years on them. Yet they seemed much older, as though the jungle had aged them. Sergeant Saunders sauntered up to their hole and crouched, holding his Thompson submachine gun across his knees. He pointed to the jungle, thick and dripping, only 15 yards in front of them. "You see that there?" he asked. "That's where you're going to keep your eyes. Don't look behind you. Don't look to the side. Just look right there. And if anything comes through there, well, that's a Jap, and you kill that Jap. Understand?" Humphrey and Davy both nodded. "I asked if you understood," the sergeant repeated with added iron. "Yeah, we understand, or I understand," Humphrey blurted loudly. Davy asked, "Are we expecting an attack tonight? I mean, it's Christmas Eve. Don't they celebrate Christmas? Everybody celebrates Christmas, don't they?" The sergeant sneered and said, "They're Japs. The only thing they celebrate is killing Yanks, especially fresh meat like you two. It'd make their day to drive a bayonet into your skull or your heart or wherever. So keep a close eye out, and that won't happen." Humphrey felt he might throw up. He hadn't even seen a Japanese soldier yet, but he was more scared than he'd ever been. The sergeant added, "Forget Christmas. Out here, there is no Christmas. Just stay alive. Simple, But that means you gotta kill the Japs before they kill you. Got it? Got it, they murmured. The sergeant scowled, stood, then moved to the next hole. You think it's bullshit? I mean, about the Japs wanting to kill us on Christmas Eve? Hell if I know, Davy exclaimed. But I'm gonna do what he says. He's been through the shit. From what I hear, he's been shot once and stabbed twice, and he's still here. Really? Wow. But doesn't that make him unlucky? I mean, to get shot and stabbed. I don't want to have either of those things happen. For crying out loud, Humphrey said. Davy shook his head. It just means he's tough as nails. And that's all I can ask for in a sergeant, I guess. Glad he's our squad leader. An unfamiliar voice suddenly erupted right behind them. You're damn right he's tough as nails. And you better listen to him too. He knows what he's about. Humphrey and Davy both jumped. They hadn't heard the soldier approach. Humphrey saw the single stripe on his shoulder and recognized the assistant squad leader, Corporal Newsom. Yes, Corporal, we're happy to be in the squad, Humphrey said. Newsom sneered. Well, I can't say the feeling's mutual. By the way, it's going to get dark in about 2 hours, and when it does, no more talking. You stay alert, just like the sergeant told you. Understand? They both nodded, and Humphrey said, Got it, Corporal. No problem. The corporal stood, took a step, then he turned back as if remembering something. Oh, one more thing. Mail call came, and I think you got something. Is it Humphrey? Humphrey nodded and said, Yeah, Private Humphrey. Davy looked at him hopefully, but the corporal sneered and said, Nothing for you, though. No presents on Christmas Eve for Private Numbnuts. He wiped fake tears and made a point of acting it out. Davy's face reddened. Humphrey said, Don't worry. Whatever my parents sent, I'll share with you. We'll open it together. Corporal Newsom grinned and said, Well, ain't you two just two peas in a pod sharing presents? You swapping spit, too? Humphrey and Davy both shook their heads adamantly. The corporal laughed at his joke and disappeared into the jungle behind them. They could hear his cackling long after he had left. Davy said, I'm sure glad he's not in charge. Humphrey said, Well, he's the assistant squad leader, so he may as well be. A short time later, another corporal showed up carrying a green sack over his shoulder. Some of the other soldiers hooted and whistled at him. They shouted, Hey, looky there. Santa Claus has come to town. Bring anything for me, old St. Nick? Say, where's your beard, and why are you so skinny? Where is Mrs. Claus? Someone leered. The corporal threw off the sack and called out names. The men gathered around as though he offered a cool drink of water after a long stint in the desert. The men smiled like schoolchildren when they received a letter or a package. They'd tuck them under their arms and scamper away. These hard men who had killed and seen friends killed acted like children. They suddenly didn't seem as ferocious to Humphrey. Could it be that they were just as scared and homesick as he was? The bag slowly emptied. The corporal finally came to the end, then dug into the bottom and said, Oh, there's one more here. He read the name. A Private Irwin Humphrey. Humphrey stood tall and reached. That's me. It was a small package, and he recognized his younger brother's blocky little kid handwriting. He pictured Teddy with his tongue curled in the corner of his mouth as he carefully spelled out his name and unit. Humphrey tried to guess the contents through the packaging. I wonder what it is, he mused. Well, open it, Davy said excitedly. There's a note attached to it. I'll read that first. He carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a brief letter written in a 10-year-old script. Humphrey read it. Dear Irwin, gosh, I sure miss you. I don't know when you will get this. I hope you get it before Christmas. That seems crazy. Christmas is over a month away. But Mama said it might take a while to get there, so I sent it early. You're clear across the ocean. I carved and whittled it myself with the knife you gave me before you left. I keep it sharp, just like you showed me. Mama helped me paint it. It's supposed to be a soldier, but Dad says it looks more like him on account of the belly. I did my best, though, and I hope you like it. Teddy. P.S. It's a Christmas ornament. Davy rolled his eyes and said, Criminy sakes. He ruined the surprise. Humphrey refolded the letter and tucked it into his front pocket. He opened the package one fold at a time, finally exposing the hand-carved wooden ornament. Teddy had done a good job, but Humphrey agreed with his father. It didn't look much like a soldier. Davy laughed and said, Well, maybe it's a soldier that likes to eat a lot of donuts and skipped out on PT. Humphrey held the ornament in his palm and rubbed the wood with his thumb. It felt smooth, as though his brother had spent hours sanding it before applying paint. Screwed into the top of the soldier's head was a small hook with a green and red ribbon attached. He held it up and spun it. The bright sunlight sparkled off the fresh paint. Davy admired the work and said, "Well, he did a nice job. Sure was thoughtful of him." Humphrey agreed. "Sure was. He's a good kid." "I'll bet he's proud of you, huh?" Davy asked. Humphrey shrugged and said, "Yeah, I guess so. I think he's pretty scared, though." "Scared of what?" Just scared. He's a kid." Humphrey felt suddenly overwhelmed. He dropped his head and swiped at his eyes. Davy pretended not to notice. He stared into the jungle. "I sure miss him. I miss all of them. This is my first Christmas away." Humphrey looked around forlornly. "How the hell did we end up here?" Davy shrugged and said, "Duty called and we answered. You know that as well as I do." Humphrey nodded, got control of himself, and clutched the ornament tightly to his chest. "I hope I don't lose this thing. I'd hate to drop it in the mud." He tucked it into the pocket with the letter, shoving it all the way to the bottom. Davy said, "It's your lucky charm. Instead of a rabbit's foot, you've got yourself a nice ornament. It's just as good." Humphrey patted it and said, "Yep, I suppose so." The night covered the jungle like a fetid wet blanket. One moment it was light, and the next it was dark. There was no more chatter from the other soldiers. Only the insects and the occasional night bird broke the silence. Humphrey clutched his M1, making sure for the 1,000th time that he had loaded it properly. Back in boot camp, the drill instructors had incessantly drilled them on keeping their weapons clean and well-oiled. But how the hell was he supposed to do that when everything was muddy and wet? Just before the darkness had descended, Humphrey and Davy had eaten their Christmas Eve dinner. Cold crackers with jelly and a hard brick, which the army called chocolate. It didn't taste like chocolate, more like dirt. As Humphrey stared out into the black jungle, he wondered what meal his family enjoyed, or would enjoy since they were a day behind. What delicacies had his mother prepared for them? With the war, rationing was in full effect, but he supposed she'd still prepare something scrumptious. It certainly wouldn't be hard to beat the meal the army provided. Hell, a team of monkeys could do better than that, he thought. Davy suddenly stiffened and whispered, "Did you see that?" Humphrey focused and stared into the darkness, but saw nothing but deep shadows. He whispered back, "What are you talking about? I don't see anything different from last time." Davy touched his ear and said, "Listen, do you hear it?" Humphrey turned his head slightly and listened, but only heard the incessant chirps and buzzes of insects. So many insects. "You're hearing things," he whispered, with a bite of anger in his voice. Davy had done this at least 10 times already, and it never amounted to anything. "You're going to give yourself a heart attack if you don't settle down. Try to relax," he pleaded. "Tell you what, get some shut-eye, and I'll keep watch. Just sink down to the bottom of the hole and close your eyes. I'll let you know if anything happens." Davy didn't move, but kept staring into the void. He finally said, "Ain't no way I could sleep right now." Time didn't seem to pass. The night felt endless. Humphrey whispered, "What time is it?" "How the hell should I know? I think it's late, but I can't be sure out here. How much longer can tonight last?" Humphrey whispered back, "Never seems like it's going to end. Christmas Eve has that effect on kids, but out here, well, it sure is different." The minutes ticked by like molasses dripping down a tree on a frozen winter day. Humphrey tapped the grenade attached to his webbing. Then he touched the ornament in his front pocket. He felt better knowing a part of his family, a part of Christmas, was with him on this holy night. Holy night, more like holy terror night. From the left, where more foxholes spread out into the darkness, he heard an indistinct murmur. It grew slowly, and he held his breath. Davy hissed into his ear, "What the hell is that? Is it singing?" Humphrey perked his ears, trying to hear better. Then he said, I think it is. I think someone's singing Silent Night." He expected to hear Sergeant Saunders' harsh voice shutting it down before it gave their position away. But it never came, and the singing grew louder. "Silent night, holy night." The song carried, making the night seem less dark and ominous. Fear fell away, replaced with joy and hope. Humphrey felt the prickle of tears at the corners of his eyes. It was his favorite Christmas song. It should be wildly out of place here in the jungle, with imminent death lurking only yards away. But somehow, it fit perfectly. He hung on every lyrical chord. The singer had a clear voice, which carried well and true. More voices joined in. It wasn't loud, but strong, and it filled Humphrey's heart and made him miss his family even more. He pulled out the ornament and clutched it tightly. Everything would be all right after all. He desperately wanted to join in the singing, but remembered what his squad leader had said about making unnecessary noise, so he clammed up. To his astonishment, Davy, in a crackly voice, joined in. The entire squad sang now. He could even hear voices rising from the mortar teams set up behind them. He cleared his voice and sang along. He'd always had a good voice, a voice his mother praised. Christmas caroling was always a priority in the days leading up to Christmas, and especially on Christmas Eve. He wondered if perhaps his family sang that very song at that very moment on the other side of the world. He hoped so, and his voice grew stronger. They finished the song, and even through all those years of caroling with his family, it was the sweetest rendition he ever remembered hearing. It didn't have perfect harmony, nor the lightness of a female voice, but it was Christmas. Christmas in the South Pacific. Christmas in the face of fear, in spite of fear. Humphrey smiled for the first time in a long time. No one started a new song. It was enough. Silent Night, on that Christmas Eve, had created magic. The Christmas spirit had risen, even just for a moment. Minutes later, still glowing with the after effects from the song, Humphrey heard a new sound. The insects stopped chirping, and the night birds stopped squawking. Something moved in the jungle. The fear returned, eclipsing all the goodwill and calm in an instant. He held his breath, and the sweat on his face turned to ice. He gripped his rifle and touched the grenade on his chest again. Long seconds of terror seemed to stretch on forever. Beside him, Davy had gone still as stone. Then he heard a scream. A soldier, to his right. It sent a shockwave through his system. He nearly squeezed the trigger, in fear. Someone yelled, "Japs! Japs are here!" Davy lurched from side to side as though he'd lost control of his body. He whimpered involuntarily. Humphrey grabbed his shirt to keep him from bolting out the back of the hole. "Calm down. Grab your rifle and get ready." Humphrey released him and took his own advice. He pulled his rifle butt to his shoulder and aimed down the sights. He swept the rifle from side to side. His breaths came in short, sharp gasps. His mouth hung open, and he wanted to be anywhere but there. Sweat dripped into his eyes, and he swiped it away impatiently. A shadow emerged from the blackness in front of him. One instant nothing, then movement. He focused on it, unsure. Then he saw the shape of a man, the shape of a soldier, rushing straight at him without a sound. He pulled the trigger as fast as he could. The crashing of his rifle was the loudest thing he'd ever heard, and the muzzle flash made him see spots. He fired until he'd spent all 8 rounds. He continued pulling the trigger, but nothing happened. Shit, he exclaimed. "Cover me. Need to reload." Davy didn't respond. Humphrey spun, searching for his squad mate, but he was gone. "I'm alone," he realized. He thought about running, but no, it wasn't in him. He doubted his legs would work properly. He'd fall flat on his face, then be shot in the back or worse, bayoneted. Fear kept him firmly in place. He fumbled for his ammo pouch and finally pulled out another stripper clip. He pulled back the M1's breech and pushed the clip into place, but not before the breech slammed onto his thumb. He bellowed in pain. It was a rookie move, one which the drill instructors had endlessly harped upon. He aimed down the sights. His heartbeat made the sights leap around, and he had trouble focusing. The form he had seen was now an immobile lump. Should he fire into it? No. Save your ammo. Perhaps he should hurl his one grenade into the jungle. Surely, the enemy wouldn't just send one man. A crashing explosion to his right confirmed that other soldiers had the same thought. The flashing explosion silhouetted terrifying scenes. He rubbed away the spots, then concentrated on the darkness ahead. Sergeant Saunders bellowed, "Fix bayonets! Fix bayonets!" Humphrey's blood ran cold as he automatically reached for the long knife strapped to his side. His shaking hands could barely attach it to his rifle, but it finally clicked into place with a satisfying snick. More shadows emerged from the jungle. He shifted his rifle and fired. He emptied the clip into the nearest shadowy form. It dropped, but the others kept coming. Corporal Newsom appeared out of nowhere. He slid into the foxhole and slammed into the front wall, making Humphrey jump. "Easy does it," the corporal said as he aimed into the darkness. Humphrey could hardly speak but blurted, "They're right there. They're right in front of me. I need to reload." Newsom growled, "No time. Here they come." Newsom fired once before 2 Japanese soldiers were upon them. The nearest soldier leaped, his bayonet leading. He screamed like a madman, and Private Irwin Humphrey pissed himself. He barely noticed. The screaming soldier buried his bayonet into Corporal Newsom's chest with a sickening crunch. Newsom screamed in agony. His screams turned to wet gurgles as he fell backward against the foxhole wall. He dropped his carbine, and his hands clutched at the bayonet and rifle sticking unnaturally from his chest. The enemy soldier tripped and fell headfirst into the hole, leaving his bayonet buried in Newsom's chest. Humphrey reacted without thinking. He lifted his rifle overhead, then plunged the bayonet down into the bottom of the hole. He couldn't see his victim, but he felt the long blade puncture skin, bone, and organs. The Japanese soldier added his screams to Corporal Newsom's. Liquid warmth splashed Humphrey's face, and he tasted iron. He pulled on the rifle, but it didn't come easily as the blade caught on ribs. It finally came out with an awful scraping sound. He plunged it down again. The screams changed to whimpers. From the corner of his eye, more movement in the darkness. A shadowy soldier charged the hole. Humphrey pulled desperately on his rifle, but it was hopelessly stuck. He had to act fast or die. He groped frantically for Corporal Newsom's dropped carbine. The enemy soldier screamed, "Bonsai!" and leaped. Humphrey found the carbine, spun, and fired into the form. The night once again flashed into brightness. The soldier slammed into him. The weight of his body crushed Humphrey into the bottom of the hole. He continued pulling the trigger until the ammo ran out. Quiet descended on the hole. Is he still alive? Am I about to die? He heaved upward, shifting the body off his back. It slipped off him like a sodden sack of potatoes and settled around his legs. He could hardly move. The hole was filled with bodies. Newsom continued to gurgle and make terrible sounds, noises that no man could make unless mortally wounded. Still clutching the carbine, Humphrey scrambled from the hole, then lay down with the rifle pointed toward the darkness. He saw mounds, but no movement. The gurgling from the foxhole continued, but slowed. More grenades exploded in the darkness. The unmistakable sound of a Thompson submachine gun firing on full automatic filled the air. The muzzle flashes lit up Sergeant Saunders' face. His bared teeth and crazy red eyes reminded him of the devil. Saunders swept the jungle with the heavy .45 caliber rounds. No return fire came, and soon silence hung over the battlefield once again. Humphrey stared wide-eyed into the abyss. The smell of urine, cordite, and sulfur mixed with the iron scent of blood made him gag. He threw up his pathetic Christmas Eve dinner. Corporal Newsom's gurgling brought him back from the abyss. He yelled, "Corpsman! I need a corpsman! Newsom's hit! Hurry, hurry!" The rest of the night passed without incident. Private Humphrey remained in his foxhole while other soldiers had cleared out the dead and wounded. The dead Japanese soldiers were stacked a few feet away from his hole. They made eerie death sounds as air escaped and tissues shifted. He had to cover his ears to keep from going insane. They'd urgently dragged Corporal Newsom from the foxhole and took him back to the aid station. He'd still been breathing raggedly, but Humphrey didn't know whether he lived or died. When dawn finally came, he couldn't recall a more welcome sight. His hands still shook, and exhaustion swept over his body. The other soldiers moved among the foxholes, emerging like cave dwellers after a storm. They nodded at him as though he'd passed some kind of test. It was the most attention they'd paid him since he'd arrived. He'd craved their attention, but now it felt hollow. All he'd really done was stay alive. Basic human instinct had taken over. He killed, or he would have been killed. It was as simple as that. He hadn't thought of home, or country, or God. No, he'd simply done what he had to do to survive. Private Davy approached the foxhole. He couldn't look Humphrey in the eye. His gaze never left his boots. Shame dripped off him like liquid. Davy murmured, So sorry. I left you. I was... Humphrey cut him off. Stow it. I don't want to hear it. Find yourself another hole. Davy's shoulders slumped further, and he dragged himself away. Humphrey felt a twinge of guilt deep down, but damn it, the son of a bitch had left him in the lurch. He'd nearly died. He might forgive him someday, but not yet. Not now. If not for his cowardice, Corporal Newsom might not be fighting for his life in the infirmary. A few minutes later, 2 veteran soldiers approached his foxhole. They sat on the lip and offered Humphrey a cigarette. He took it and leaned in as Private First Class Maxwell pulled out his Zippo and lit it for him. Humphrey took a drag and immediately coughed and hacked. PFC Maxwell and Private Irwin both chuckled. Irwin asked, "That your first cigarette?" Humphrey answered through hacking coughs. "Yeah." "Well, you'll get used to it," Irwin said. "Out here, there's not much else to do between the fighting." Humphrey took a more careful drag and kept from coughing. Maxwell said, "You did good last night, kid. That was tough, no doubt about it. And you did good." Humphrey nodded and said, "Thanks." He thought he should say more, but had nothing more to say. What could he say? Should he describe how it felt when his bayonet sank into flesh, or how it sounded? They understood. He'd said enough. They'd all been through the same thing. They were survivors, just like him. Sergeant Saunders bellowed through cupped hands. "All right, you guys, grab your shit. We're moving back. We leave in 10 minutes. Hurry your asses up before they change their minds." Humphrey exchanged glances with the others. Maxwell raised a bushy eyebrow. The pair stood and walked back toward their own holes. They moved like old men, their bodies stiff from the long, terrifying night. Humphrey felt for the ornament in his shirt pocket. The letter was there, but not the ornament. He tapped and dug and pressed, but he couldn't find it. He checked his pants pockets. He checked his back pockets. He checked his ammo pouch, nothing. Panic welled in his gut. He needed that ornament. It had gotten him through the night. Like Davy said, it was his lucky charm. "Shit, shit, shit," he cursed as he scoured the bottom of the hole. Maxwell turned back towards him and asked, "What's the matter? What did you lose?" Humphrey didn't stop looking, but said, "I lost my kid brother's gift. My Christmas gift. It must have fallen out when I was fighting the Japs. It's got to be around here somewhere. I didn't move more than a few feet from the hole. It must be at the bottom. I'm just not seeing it." Maxwell and Irwin joined the search. They pulled back dirt and rocks from around the outside of the hole, but found nothing but blood and spent brass cartridges. "It's not here, kid. I don't see it," Maxwell said. "I gotta find it. I just gotta." They kept looking, but the minutes ticked past. Maxwell looked at the stack of Japanese bodies. "Well, I guess there's only one other place to look," he stated flatly. The bodies had bloated with the heat and gave off a subtle stench which would ripen with every passing moment. Flies buzzed around their mouths and eyes. It wouldn't be long before maggots covered them. Humphrey looked to the heavens, closed his eyes, then went to the bodies. He kneeled in front of them. He pushed the first one off the top, and it slumped into the mud beyond. Humphrey felt sick to his stomach. He had killed these men, and now he pawed through their belongings. Max and Irwin stood by and watched, unwilling to join in the hunt. Humphrey checked the dead men's pockets. He pulled out documents and photos. Photos of wives, children, parents, brothers, sisters, grandparents, and even babies. His search slowed to a snail's pace. These men, these soldiers, had families and lives. They had hopes and dreams just like he did. He had robbed them of those. He shook his head, angry at himself. No, they forced me. I had to do it, or I'd be dead. I didn't attack them. They came at me. Sergeant Saunders bellowed, "All right, ladies, let's get a move on." But Humphrey still hadn't found the ornament. He still hadn't found the talisman that would keep him alive, his Christmas gift. He came to the last soldier and pushed on his back. The soldier rolled away from him, and beneath his body, he saw the ornament pressed into the mud. Joy flooded him as he grasped the ornament. He swiped at the mud, dirt, and blood, but it wouldn't come clean. It didn't matter. He felt complete again. "I found it!" he exclaimed. He held it triumphantly over the festering bodies. Maxwell said, "Well, good. Now let's get the hell out of here before those Japs decide they want some payback." Humphrey clasped the ornament to his chest. He gathered his things, then took one last look at the pile of enemy soldiers and the family photos scattered in the mud. It's Christmas Day, he suddenly remembered. He swallowed the bile rising in his throat, then joined the others. The end.
Made with Spoken. Now available at spoken.press.